Hello, and welcome to the Year of Being 70 podcast. I'm Lucy McCarraher, and I'm with my childhood friend Lisette Schoutemaker. We both turned 70 at the end of last year, and this podcast is where we talk about our lives at 70, look back at our past, and think about the future. And this is our episode 11.
11 already, Lucy. I'm enjoying our conversations. And today we said we'd look back to 30 years ago when we actually turned 40. And I know the big 40 for some is like frightening because it's like the end of being young. Life really gets serious from there. So I wonder, how was it for you?
Well, for me, it was quite tumultuous. I had been married for 20 years at that point when I was 40, and my first marriage had basically disintegrated in the previous few years and had become very toxic for both of us. And the decision had been made, actually, probably a couple of years before that it was over. And of course, it was very difficult. We had children of about 12 and 10, I think, at that point. And so, of course, that was absolutely horrible for them. But then we kind of came out of the marriage and actually coming out of a long relationship is very discombobulating. It really kind of makes you feel you don't know who you are anymore. If you've been part of a couple for 20 years, that is a really difficult place to come out of and reform yourself. So I think I was sort of feeling quite uncertain, really. But by the time I was 40, I had met someone else. I had met Richard, who I married. I think I was just before I was 41. I mean, it wasn't like, I got divorced and then I got married the same year. It wasn't like, that. It was just that the divorce, the legal stuff happened that year. It takes ages to actually get divorced. So it had, I'd been with Richard for a bit. So then that was, turning 40 was actually the start of a whole new life for me. And we decided we were going to have children. As it turned out, we adopted children. But I'd had 20 years of living in one family with two children. That came to an end. And then I began all over again with a new partner, a new husband, and a second family.
And
So
it's such a big thing because you hear in like people, oh, they're divorced, and we were not in touch very much at that
we
time.
weren't,
I
no.
was running my business and you were running your family and doing your work. And then if a marriage kind of is falling apart, then it's also difficult, I think, to maintain friendships but you have to kind of separate everything. There's the financial, there's the legal, there's the emotional, there's the friends, there's where you live.
Yeah,
It's
there's
really a
families.
very big thing to do.
Yes. I mean, Rob's family were my best friends, and I just lost them all basically. So it was, there's so much to a relationship. It's not just two people by any means. It's a whole life.
Yeah.
So it's
I love this sentence it comes from West Side Story where it says, make of our lives one life, make of our dreams one dream. And I mean, that's very romantic. And yeah, just yesterday I was talking with Jos about how some people feel they need to like get everything from a relationship. And I've certainly had those romantic ideas, very much also brought on by romance novels and I know movies, and people find one another, and it's like, they're everything to each other. And in reality, I think it's a good thing to still remain two people and have different lives and have interesting conversations and experiences with other people and kind of bring them back into the home and have a secure base there. But I think also that's a good term to have a secure base in the relationship.
yes, and the other thing that characterized my first marriage was that we worked together all the time.
Yeah.
We hardly, I mean, I occasionally did, and Rob occasionally did some separate things, but we were working together the whole time. And while that worked incredibly well to begin with, and we brought very different skills and abilities and personalities, and that was all that was all good. In the end, I think that kind of the business we were running in the end, the TV and video production business, kind of overwhelmed everything, and it became untenable, perhaps because simply because we were working together as much as, living together. So, and
It's
yes, and my
quite
son,
impressive what you were doing. I mean, now it's impressive what you're doing, but then at the time, it's also quite impressive what you were running. But I can imagine that, working together, living together, growing your boys together is kind of, whoa. Was
yeah, and I
it
think
also a bit
also,
suffocating, or was it?
yes, I guess yes, that's probably true. And also, I think that I kind of changed, obviously, over 20 years. I was so young when I got married, and I became, more mature, more grown up, more aware of what my own abilities and perhaps, sort of, less good abilities were. And perhaps it just didn't work, I wasn't the same person, and it didn't work so well.
Well,
So
that's also, of course, always in a long-term relationship because you do change over time. And we're now at 70, we're not the same people. Well, we are in a way,
yeah.
essentially the same, but also, yeah, more matured from when we were 40.
Indeed, yeah. And my, with my second marriage, we have, Richard and I are very different. We don't work together. Well, not very much. I mean, Richard does IT, so he's not in the same sort of creative kind of area as I am. And he does actually do the IT for our publishing company, but it's just a kind of, it's not like we're,
Yeah.
working together in the same business the whole time. So, and for this period of my life at least, that works an awful lot. That works very well. So
Yeah.
what about you, Lisette? What happened? How were you? What were you like at 40? I don't, as you say, we weren't really in touch. I didn't really know you when you were 40. I don't know what happened in your life.
Yeah. So, you know, through my 30s, I started to make these decisions that didn't lead to marriage and family life. And then at 39, I met yours. And I'd had relationships, but I'd never really lived with anyone. And so I was also quite convinced that I was not suited for relationships.
So you
And
thought you
now,
weren't suited for either relationships or children or
well, children were more something I thought was, I, I thought I wouldn't be able to get out of. But I don't ever remember thinking, oh, I'll have a family of my own. How wonderful.
no. No, that's so
I thought it
interesting.
was like obligatory. It was just a thing you did, and then you had to kind of try and be someone beside being a mother. I had not a very favorable, and of course, the age at which you got children. Now, people, women have their first child after 40. But when turned 40, it was like, well, thank God. I mean, now it's clear I will not have children. That is kind of over. And I met Jos, and he had been very clear always that he did not want a family. He's a very caring man. And so he thought, once I have children, I will just be so in the care of them, like he is in the care for me now. But, in the care for that's manageable, in the care for them that I won't be able to do my art. And so he took his measures there, and that was in a way 40 was liberating. Also, I had had kind of my opening of consciousness and I had sold my business. So I was kind of, what's next? And yeah, it was really a turning point. 40 was a turning point, like it was for you, but in a good way. Not I was in a way getting away from something from all the expectations that I hadn't fulfilled and wasn't fulfilling. but it also felt, okay, now, yeah, that's all clear now. Now it's not possible to have children any longer. And I'm with this man who doesn't even want it. And so, well, what is the next phase going to be like?
So that was yeah, very releasing for you. I mean, being 40, not necessarily being 40 itself, but my 40s were also a very liberating in a sense time for me. I moved on to a completely different phase. I became a work-life balance expert and consultant, which was completely not planned, but just, came my way. So as ever, I sort of took the opportunity and it was fascinating. It was a whole different, took me into a whole different world, kind of out of the so-called creative industries and into corporate life. And actually, in 1997, so I guess I was 42, 43, in this country, the Labour government came to power, Tony Blair's government, and put a lot of money behind work-life balance. And I mean, work-life balance was not even a phrase that people had kind of agreed on as at that point. We
Yeah.
actually had to sort of turn it into the working the way we described what that intersection between work and life, and particularly at that time for how mothers balanced their commitments. And so I there was a kind of a pot of money for all different kinds of companies to get work-life balance consultation. So I was working with a charity that had sort of developed a model for doing this. So I went into big legal companies. I went to Microsoft. I went to Virgin. I went to all sorts of companies, and also small and medium-sized companies like hairdressers, and did kind of assessments and developed ways for them to be more flexible for their employees. So it was it was a really very interesting time, sort of our 40s, 1994 to 2004, I guess.
But I
So
think it is, the work-life balance. Nowadays, I don't hear that phrase so often anymore.
no,
But there is something about, the availability 24/7 and email and apps, and it all just goes on and on and on. And so I think people do struggle with, having to be available forever, and if an email hasn't been answered within, 10 minutes, then someone's kind of, what's happening here? Are you
yeah,
still on the job? So I think it's only become more pressing, so to say. So
yes, there
can you
was.
reveal, maybe you can't, I don't know, but what is the secret to work-life balance?
Well, I mean, in terms of employment and employers, I think the secret for them to, and these are what our trials revealed the whole time. I mean, time and time again in totally different organizations, is that taking teams and working out their needs, listening to each person and what their needs were for flexibility. So, for instance, at that time, everybody generally worked in the office 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or, longer, whatever it took. And that was the expectation. So we were very much about promoting home working where it was appropriate, flexible times.
Already,
Oh, yes,
already.
yes.
Wow.
At that point,
Yeah.
and every time we did say a 3 month trial with a team where everybody was working together, everybody was able to put their needs forward and address the needs of the workplace, but also, give themselves, say, the option to come into work later and miss the rush hour or drop their children at school.
Yeah.
Or, sort of get rid of those horrible stresses that, beset particularly but not exclusively parents, and make it not just about parents as well. That was important. So,
Yeah.
every time we would come out with the result that flexible working increases productivity, it increases retention, it increases happiness in the workplace, all those things. And yet it took until COVID again until people actually thought, oh, people can work from home and, we can trust them and they do get work done. And yet all over again, people are going, no, you've got to get back into the office now. We want to see your face. We don't believe you're.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think it's flexibility has become more acceptable since COVID, but there is a whole move in some areas where it's like,
Interesting.
no, we
Because
don't
I
want
don't
this.
hear that. I hear a lot of hybrid working and
Yeah,
young people going to South Africa in the winter and meeting all they all know where to go, so they meet each other and they basically work from there and then surf later and then work a bit more. I think the whole hybrid working also. I'm now in kind of an area, Amsterdam North, where there's a lot of high rises coming up, and so the ground floor they try to rent it as offices, but it's really hard. I mean, yeah, office life has really changed.
yeah, yes, no, it really has,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it is certainly better, and certainly younger people and Gen Z are much more demanding of what they consider acceptable working arrangements and patterns. So that's good. That's very
Yeah, so
good.
when I was 40, I also had to, because I had a job, and then I worked with these two men who taught me a lot. And then I started by myself. So I was on my own in my home with my first very, very, very slow computer, very expensive, very slow computer. Then I bought this communications agency, and I all of a sudden had an office on Keizersgracht in the canal area. It was amazing. And I grew that, and we moved actually from Keizersgracht, from the canal, to the Museumplein, which was in between the Rijksmuseum and the Concertgebouw. And then we had to move again because that was temporary. And we moved to the corner of Vondelpark. So I always had these amazing offices. But yeah, everybody was there at 9 and stayed until the work was finished. And then when I sold my business, I all of a sudden had nowhere to go. I had retained. I was 39 when I sold it, I think, and I had retained some clients that I couldn't sell, so it was still, but I definitely had less work, and it was the time when I first got engaged with groups of people who thought, the world could change for the better and it might happen. It might just happen in the Netherlands. So let's get together and see what we can do. And the whole movement of environmental awareness started, and I started to be active in those kinds of circles. And also the kind of spiritual life that I had had, like books that I had read and workshops that I had started to do kind of came out in the open because I was working with other people now, which was all volunteer work, of course, but I was working with other people now who openly said, we think there's more to life than, nothing before birth. Then you're here and you do the best you can and then you die. I'd always thought I was a bit, how do I say, a bit not enough.
Reductive,
Huh?
a bit reductive.
A bit reductive, a bit schraal, I would say in Dutch. A bit, it's like kaal, like yeah, I don't know the word in English, but just, do you really think it is like that? I so much prefer to live in a living universe with a purpose.
And how did that sort of play out in your 40s then?
Um, yeah, well, I gradually got into these circles, and then actually in I think it was 94, but I'm not completely sure there on the dates. We played the game of transformation, which is a game you play with an intention, and this was with a group of people who wanted to say a bit derogatory, kind of save the world is how people, call us. It's a bit of a haha term, but we were very idealistic, but also very applied, and we're business people and people in the media, and it was a wonderfully exciting group. But then at some point, kind of the money ran out, and also we had a kind of a very first clear vision, but the next slide, so to say, never came. So we worked and worked, but we couldn't really take it from there. And then we played a game of transformation to see, what we could do together. And
So explain what a game of transformation
Yeah,
is.
the
You
game
all
of
sit
transformation was
together, or what's
developed,
the
yeah, in the Findhorn Foundation, in the Findhorn Spiritual and Community and Eco Village, which is near Inverness in Scotland. I didn't know that at the time, and it's really a board game, and you play with the dice, but each play you all play on your kind of own life path, and every square on the life path has you get like an insight, and with an insight comes awareness, and then you go to like a setback. So you're being set back by your pride. You're being set back by your fear. You're being set back by your modesty. You're being set back by whatever. And you can kind of work with the setback, with the awarenesses that you have. And there's also angels in the game, and angels can kind of lift you to a next level. And angels stand for beings who might exist or might not exist around us, but also like fields of a certain quality, like the quality of faith or the quality of trust or love or expectancy or curiosity or whatever. So you really feel, how does the angel of curiosity play out in my life? And what does it do for me? And you play with an intention. Like my intention these days often is I want to shed my light for the good of the whole. And I want to write lightly and bring light. I'm always on about light. Uh, and um, and so then I'd look at my intention and look at the angel and go like, oh, how does curiosity actually help me without it being? And an insight is more you work for it, or it kind of somewhere you can go when a setback holds you back. And there's all kinds of other squares. Anyway, we played that. And then each of us kind of got so much inspiration to kind of go our own way. And
and
it
was
took
that
me
was that what
into
was meant to happen? Was it meant to bring you together? But in fact, it did the opposite.
Well, it was meant to reveal kind of the next logical step.
Right.
And so the next logical step turned out for all of us to go do our own thing. And I was actually going to start a magazine with someone. And uh, yeah, and he and I were going to go to the US. We'd made this plan to go to the US and go to, oh God, what was it called? I don't remember the magazine, but it kind of took the good news from the whole world and kind of brought good news. Where are people doing life-affirming things? Where are they, attempting to revive community or revive nature or bring a product that is really healthy and happy making. And uh and then I had this appointment to go meet this man who wanted to have dinner with me. And then this guy called and said, I'm going to the US alone. I need to do this alone. The other entrepreneurs all have their own company. I need to have my own company. And I thought it was such utter ego rubbish. And I was so angry. And
Wow.
so on the phone, and then I was wearing this big red skirt with lots of layers. And oh my God, I had to go through this restaurant where this man was, who was sitting waiting for me. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to recognize him. So I came in really like a fury. And there this man was, sat with a glass of wine. And I blah, 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 told my story. And he poured me wine. I don't drink alcohol now, but I did at the time. And listened to me very calmly and very with real attention. And then he said, if I meet this guy, I'll punch him in the face. And
Lovely.
I thought he really believes me. He really takes my side. He is really so for me. So now I've been in relationship with him for the past 30 years.
Well, that's wonderful. What a great start to your, was that sort of your first date?
Yes, yes, that was our first date.
Oh, well, that's great. That's lovely.
Yes.
But it's interesting that we've both been in our current relationships for 30 years,
Yeah.
and we seem to be managing to sustain them, which is great. I mean, when I was married for the first time, and that was 20 years, that just seemed to be such a long time that it could never be kind of overtaken as the sort of substantial part of my life. But now at 70, I've been married to Richard for 50% longer than
Yeah.
that. So
And did you have like a big marriage again with the dress and the reception?
it
And
was it wasn't so big. I did have a dress, but it was pink. I mean, it was sort of a dress and jacket. It was long, but it was pink, not white. I thought that would be. And we got married in Chelsea Town Hall Registry Office, and then we had our reception in the Physic Garden. Which I don't know if you, it was September and luckily it was very nice weather, but it's a lovely garden. It was near where my parents were living, where for centuries herbs and medical kind of herbs have been grown, and it's a beautiful place. So it was sort of medium, I'd say. It wasn't a massive, it wasn't a massive wedding, and I didn't have a big white dress, but it was a wedding. But you have not got married, just as you have not,
well,
or have you? Am I mistaken?
yeah, we have, but we don't know the date. We don't remember when it was, and I wanted it to be as inconspicuous as possible. So, I mean, it was just for legal reasons.
Oh, so you are actually married. I literally I did not even know that, Lisette.
Well, and I don't consider myself as being
No, no,
married.
no,
I
fair enough.
consider myself as having provided for what happens basically after we die,
Yeah,
and to have provided for that it's easier to have a house together, and actually for me to transfer some money to him, and but I don't know how it feels to be married, but I never really wanted to be married.
no, no, no. I understand that from all you said.
Yeah.
And yes, and I mean I think there are sensible legal reasons for getting married or for having a legal partnership if you are going to be staying together, and things that can happen. You are
Yeah.
then the next of kin, and etc. etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is sensible. But you've never changed your name.
Oh, no.
Of course not. I know.
Why would you change your name? I do understand that when you have children, it becomes a bit, you know, can become a
Yeah.
bit, but change my name? No. And I was once in this situation where I was somewhere with my parents, and I introduced myself to this big, tycoon of a man. And I said, my name is Lisette Schuitenmaker. I'm the daughter of, and he said, well, the daughter-in-law. I said,
Ah,
I am the daughter. I was like, wow, if I carry that name, I'm a woman in my
yes.
30s, then I
Yes.
must be the daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
No, I am my own person.
Yes. No, yeah. I mean, I've changed my name. Well, I've had three names basically through my life. So I was born Lucy Wagner, and then when I married, I did take Rob's name, which is Page. So I became Lucy Page, but then I always worked as Lucy Wagner. So I
Oh,
was I had kind of two personas, if you like. I don't quite know why. I think I worked as Lucy Wagner so that I didn't look like, as we were working together, we
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
want to
Not
look
like
like a
a
husband
mom
and
and
wife
pop
team. Yeah,
shop. Yeah.
exactly. So that was a decision for that, but that meant that I sort of had, it was complicated and annoying, and I'd have checkbooks in one name and checkbooks in another name, and sort of complicated. And then I suppose when I got married to Richard, I thought, look, I'm just going to put all that aside, and I will be Lucy McCarraher, because then I'll be a fresh person. And
That is interesting
and
to
one
be
person, and I will
fresh.
only that will be, yes, I will work and play under that name, and that'll be me. And actually I really like the name Makara, because it is so odd. And even in this, there are other Lucy Wagners, other Lucy Pages, kind of on the internet. There is no other. I have never found another Lucy Makara out there on the internet anywhere. And I mean, it's the downside of it is nobody knows how to pronounce it, because it looks at best like McCarraher. And
Yeah.
I've been called, when people cold call, they call me all sorts of things. Is that Mrs. McCarther? Is that all sorts of very,
Yeah.
very odd names? But I quite like that in a way because it has its own it has its own sort of cachet.
So
Or
in a way, I never even wanted to be a Mrs.
no, no, no. I know. I mean,
I didn't want to
I
be a
don't.
Mrs. I didn't want to change my name. I don't get it. I still to this day,
No.
why are we taking a husband's name? I just don't
No, no,
get
no, no, no.
it.
It is absolutely absurd. I mean, it is, and worse than absurd. I mean, first you own your father. You are classified by your father's
Yeah.
name. You are owned by your father. And then, the wedding
Yeah.
ceremony is your father walking you up the aisle
Yeah.
to give you away. And that is, the term we
Well,
use
and
in
until I
English.
think 57, when we were already 2-year-olds, um, that was the case. And then women got, the signature of a woman got legalized. We
Yeah.
could actually
Yes, yes,
sign
exactly.
our own documents. But it was
Yes.
until I think January 57 in this country. It's just,
Yeah. Yes. No, I mean
yeah.
in the UK we couldn't have a mortgage, we couldn't have a bank account. I mean that went on into the 70s. Women on their
Really?
own, yes, couldn't I don't think they could take out we couldn't take out a mortgage. There were lots of things we couldn't do. I mean really crazy. Um, but yes, and then there's the other thing, as you say, of being Miss or Mrs. or Ms. And I remember explaining to my father why I didn't want to be. I mean, this was I can't remember. I think this is probably when I got married again. But he was saying, I mean, because he was sort of very scholarly about things, he said, well, Mister comes from the I don't know, Latin master or whatever, and no, no, the English and Mrs. and Miss both come from the word mistress, so it doesn't make any difference which you are. And I said, yes, it does. As a man, you are Mr. and you are not telling the world whether you have a partner, whether you are attached to another person. You are just, Mr., whether you're married, whether you're not married, whatever. And, when I have to choose between Miss or Mrs., I have to choose whether I am, the unmarried spinster or,
Yeah.
the partner, the secondary partner of a man. And that's why Muz was, and that's actually what the discussion was about. He didn't like the idea of the word Muz. He thought it was
Yeah, yeah,
ugly
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
silly
yeah,
and
yeah,
so, but he did
yeah.
get it when I explained that to him. He did get that. But I don't. Yeah, I mean, and I'm usually Muz if I have to give a
Yeah, but
give
nowadays it isn't
example.
such a big deal.
No, no, it's not. No, no,
It's not. It's no.
no.
Wow, that was 40.
Yes, yes, and it's sort of, I think it's interesting that we both found our 40s being 40 a transformational time, but in a positive way. And I think there's a lot of stigma attached to
Yeah.
being 40, and I
Being
suppose,
over the hill.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, in your 20s and your 30s, you're still young, aren't you? But when you get to 40, that is at the least it's middle age, and I suppose for women as well, it's leading into the kind of the non-fertile time of your life. And yes, as you say, over the hill,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, there's these, expressions you've kind of, yeah. The idea that you're suddenly old.
Yes,
And
yes,
you are. I mean, transitioning into a new phase, which
yes.
I hear so many. I mean, just the other day, it was like, oh, and I'm older and I can't do this anymore, I can't do that anymore. You're like, oh, I mean, sometimes I think like that, but I don't want to think like that. I'm like, I mean, also at 70, my sister-in-law died in 2001. She has not made it to this age. There's
Wow.
many other people who have not made it. Even my big friend Eckhart, he died when he was almost 69. And yeah, so I hope to see every age, 72, as an adventure.
Yeah.
How is it to be 70? And that's what we are finding out, you and I
Absolutely.
together.
And it is an adventure. And yeah, I don't think I don't think I felt bad about turning 40 as the number, just as I haven't felt bad about turning 70. But yeah, I think there is stigma attached, I think, to both those two numbers, particularly, 30, 50, not so bad. But 40 and 70 seem to
Yeah,
be,
I don't know what this kind of tendency is to try and make you feel bad about something that is inevitably happening when you're lucky.
yes, yes,
You know?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that's right. Oh, well, I mean, there we are.
Oh,
We are lucky to be 70. We were lucky to be 40. We had
yes.
a good transition through to that phase of our lives when we were 40, and it was an interesting time to be alive. Um, I,
Yes. We'll talk about that another time.
we will. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Well, a good discussion and interesting to learn things about you that I literally did not know before. So,
Yeah, me neither. It's very strange that I was not at your second wedding, but we
no,
were in touch. I mean, we were both kind of, shaping our own lives, a bit too busy.
yeah,
Now
yeah,
I get to know it all. So,
absolutely.
and not
Yeah.
only me, all the people who are watching and listening. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, well, I tend not to think about that when I'm talking to you.
No, me neither.
I'm just chatting to you. That's how it is for me,
Yes.
which is great.
Okay, Lucy, see you
Okay,
next week.
we'll chat again next week. Yes.
Yes.
Bye,
Bye.
Lisette.
Thank you.